Elias pushed his mop across the glowing floor of the Dragon Queen's palace, the swish of water echoing off the high ceilings. He was just a janitor, a human who cleaned the palace halls and fixed broken lights. He was small and quiet, often ignored by the other humans who worked there. No one paid much attention to him. No one, except the twins. The Dragon Queen's children were impossible. Ignis and Zephyra were not like ordinary dragons. They were fast, clever, and wild. They had driven away every nanny, every teacher, every caretaker who tried to handle them. Flames, roars, and flying objects followed in their wake. The humans had called them monsters. But Elias didn't think of them that way. He had seen the fear in the eyes of every human who tried to get close. And he had seen the curiosity in the twins' eyes. Something in him told him there was a way. The queen, a tall dragon with shimmering scales, watched from a high balcony. Her expression was serious. "The twins cannot be controlled," she said, her voice soft but heavy. "No one can tame them. Not even my most trusted servants. Whoever tries will fail. Whoever fails, will regret it." Other humans whispered about the reward. The queen offered a great honor and riches to anyone who could calm the twins. Most thought it was impossible. Most were too afraid to even try. But Elias didn't care about riches. He cared about understanding. He wanted to know the twins. He stepped forward. "I will try," he said, his voice quiet but steady. The palace staff laughed. A janitor? Taming the Dragon Queen's children? It was impossible. But Elias didn't flinch. He had cleaned their halls for months, seen them play, seen their moods change like storms. He thought he could do it in a way others hadn't. The twins noticed him immediately. Ignis, the older brother, narrowed his golden eyes. Zephyra, his sister, let out a soft growl and flicked her tail in warning. Elias knelt slowly, keeping his hands in front of him. He didn't move too fast. He didn't look afraid. "Hello," he said gently. "I'm Elias. I just want to be your friend." The twins roared. Flames burst from Ignis' mouth, scorching the walls nearby. Zephyra jumped onto a floating platform and knocked over a vase. Other humans gasped and backed away. Most would have run. Elias did not. He stayed on his knees, watching carefully. He noticed something: they were testing him. Every roar, every fire burst, every knock was a challenge. They were not cruel for no reason. They wanted to see if he would panic, if he would run, if he would fight. Elias stayed calm. He picked up the broken vase and held it carefully, showing it to them without touching them. "I see what you did," he said. "I can help fix this." Zephyra tilted her head. Ignis blinked. It was a small thing, but it was the first sign of curiosity. Elias smiled faintly. He knew patience was the key. Other humans had tried to control the twins with force. He would not. He would earn their trust, slowly, like a seed growing into a tree. Days passed. Elias learned the twins' patterns. He learned when Ignis liked to sleep, when Zephyra liked to chase floating lights. He learned how to avoid their sudden bursts of fire. He cleaned their rooms without disturbing their play. Sometimes, he left small gifts, shiny stones, glowing fruits, little mechanical toys he fixed from broken palace machines. The other humans watched in disbelief. "He will fail," one whispered. "He is just a janitor. They are dragons." But Elias ignored them. He did not rush. He did not demand attention. He only watched, learned, and waited for the right moment. Then one morning, something happened that made the queen herself stop and watch. Elias had left a glowing crystal in the twins' playroom. They circled it, sniffed it, and finally, together, touched it with their claws. They looked at each other. They looked at Elias. And then, for the first time, they did not roar. They did not spit fire. They simply stared at him. Elias knelt with a gentle smile. "Good morning," he said softly. I will not hurt you. I want to be your friend. Ignis tilted his head, then slowly, almost carefully, stepped closer. Zephyra followed, her wings folding as she crouched low. The queen's scales shimmered in the sunlight streaming through the palace windows. She was silent. No one had ever seen the twins act this way. The impossible was happening. Elias did not know if he could tame them completely. He only knew this: the first step had been taken. The twins were curious. They were watching him. And that was more than anyone else had ever achieved. The other humans were shocked. They whispered, stared, and shook their heads. A janitor, an ordinary human, was doing what no trained caretaker could. They could see it in the twins' eyes: respect. And perhaps, something like trust. Elias rose slowly, keeping his hands empty and open. I will stay with you, he said. We will see how much we can do together. The twins blinked, then, in unison, Ignis and Zephyra stepped a little closer, circling him. Elias smiled again. He did not celebrate. He knew this was only the beginning. But in that moment, the impossible seemed possible. Elias returned to the twins' playroom early the next morning. The palace was quiet, the corridors still glowing with soft light, and the humans were far away, whispering about him. He did not mind. He knew the twins needed space, and he needed patience. Ignis and Zephyra were already awake. The older brother, Ignis, perched on a floating platform, wings slightly spread, eyes sharp and alert. Zephyra, the younger sister, crouched low near the edge of the room, tail flicking nervously. They had not spoken, but their eyes followed him. Elias smiled softly, keeping his hands empty and open. Good morning, he said gently. I brought something for you. He held up a small, glowing fruit he had found in the palace gardens. It shone like a tiny sun. The twins tilted their heads. Ignis flicked a claw, sending a small spark into the air. Elias stayed calm. I am not afraid of you, he whispered. I just want to share this with you. Zephyra stepped forward cautiously, sniffing the fruit. Ignis remained still, watching her. Then, slowly, Zephyra touched it with her claw, pulling it toward her. She looked at Elias with curiosity. He smiled and set another fruit down. They were testing him. Elias understood. Every move they made was a challenge. They wanted to see if he would panic, run, or fight. But he did not. He remained calm, patient, and careful. He had learned something important: fear would only make them stronger, but trust could make them listen. Over the next few hours, Elias studied their behavior. He noticed patterns no one else had seen. Ignis liked the platforms near the ceiling, where he could jump and swoop. Zephyra preferred the lower areas, where she could chase floating lights. When they were hungry, they were calm; when bored, they became wild. Elias did not force interaction. He waited, letting them explore. Sometimes, he moved quietly behind them, fixing broken toys or arranging floating platforms so they would not fall. The twins watched, unsure, curious, but they did not attack. Then the first real test came. Zephyra leapt onto a high platform, testing its strength, and it wobbled dangerously. Without thinking, Elias ran forward, using a long pole to steady the platform. Zephyra froze, eyes wide. Ignis roared, flames licking the air, but Elias did not back down. He held the platform steady until the twins were safe. For the first time, they hesitated. Elias knelt, hands open, and spoke softly. See? I can help. I am not your enemy. The twins circled him, sniffing, pawing at the air. They were still cautious, still testing, but something had changed. They were curious. They were watching him. And Elias smiled quietly, knowing that trust, even a little, had begun to form. The humans outside the room whispered. He is crazy, one said. No one can tame them. But Elias ignored them. He did not care what others thought. All that mattered was understanding the twins. He had learned that force would never work. Only patience, care, and intelligence could reach them. Elias spent the next week observing, learning, and interacting with small gestures. He left tiny gifts, shiny stones, little machines he had fixed, glowing fruits. He noticed how the twins reacted. Ignis liked shiny things, Zephyra liked moving lights. They tested him every day, breathing fire, knocking over platforms, and roaring loudly. But Elias remained calm. He spoke softly, moved slowly, and never threatened them. Then one day, disaster struck. A sudden fireball from Ignis accidentally started a small blaze near the palace walls. Panic spread among the human staff, but Elias ran forward. He grabbed a water drone from the storage room and directed it carefully to put out the fire. The twins watched in surprise. They had expected chaos, fear, or shouting, but Elias was calm. Zephyra stepped closer. Ignis stopped roaring. Elias spoke softly, "I am here. I can help." It was the first time the twins responded without aggression. They had seen his courage and intelligence. They had seen that he could handle danger calmly, that he could think clearly when others panicked. And in that moment, they began to understand him. The Queen, watching from above, felt a spark of hope. Could it really be possible that a human, one small janitor, was connecting with her untamable children? She had never seen anything like it. The twins, wild and clever beyond measure, were slowly showing curiosity instead of fear and anger. Elias knew the real challenge had only begun. He had gained their attention, but he had not yet earned their trust completely. Every day would be a test, every gesture a question, every action a chance to fail. But he did not fear it. He had patience. He had courage. And most importantly, he had the belief that humans, no matter how small or ordinary, could make a difference. That evening, as the glowing lights of the palace settled into quiet shadows, Elias knelt near the twins, offering a small, repaired toy. Ignis sniffed it, Zephyra pawed at it, and for a moment, the room was still. No fire, no chaos, just curiosity. Elias smiled. This was the first real step. And he knew that with patience, courage, and understanding, the impossible task of taming the Dragon Queen's twins might just be possible. Elias had spent weeks observing the twins, learning their habits, and slowly earning small signs of trust. Ignis and Zephyra no longer roared at him immediately, and sometimes they even allowed him to enter their playroom without attacking. Still, Elias knew the real challenge had not yet come. They were clever dragons. They tested him constantly, and one wrong move could undo all his progress. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered over the palace. The floating platforms outside began to sway violently in the wind. A sudden storm had come from nowhere. The palace's crystal windows rattled, and the lights flickered. Humans screamed and ran to safe areas. The twins, startled, scattered in opposite directions. Ignis leapt onto a high platform, claws gripping the edge, while Zephyra darted toward the lower courtyard, her wings beating furiously against the wind. Elias ran toward the chaos. He could see the twins' fear, different from their usual wild energy. This was not play. This was danger. Ignis had misjudged a jump and now dangled over the edge, swaying perilously. Zephyra's platform cracked under her weight. He had only seconds to act. Without hesitation, Elias grabbed a long staff from the maintenance area. He ran to the platform under Ignis and pressed it against the edge, holding it steady. The older twin roared, flames sparking, but Elias did not flinch. He shouted over the wind, "Hold still. I've got you." Ignis' eyes met his. For the first time, there was no challenge in them, only confusion and trust. Elias carefully guided Ignis back onto the platform, holding the staff steady until the dragon's claws had a firm grip. Meanwhile, Zephyra's platform tilted dangerously. Elias dashed across a floating walkway, carefully jumping from one swaying platform to another. He reached the younger twin just as a panel beneath her cracked. With quick thinking, he held up his other staff to support it. Zephyra froze, staring at him. Then, in a move full of trust, she let Elias guide her to safety. The storm howled around them, lightning striking nearby, wind tossing everything in the courtyard. But Elias stayed calm. He moved slowly, carefully, speaking in soft, steady tones. I am here. You are safe. Trust me. After what felt like hours, though it was only minutes, the twins were both secure. They did not roar. They did not spit fire. They simply watched Elias, breathing heavily, wings folded. For the first time, they had faced real danger and realized that this human, small, ordinary, a janitor, was capable of keeping them alive when no one else could. The Queen appeared on the balcony, her eyes wide with surprise. No human had ever done what Elias just did. No one had earned the trust of her children in a crisis. Elias stood between the twins, hands empty, heart steady. He did not boast. He did not celebrate. He simply looked at them and said, softly, "You are safe now. I won't leave you." The twins circled him slowly. Ignis nudged his head against Elias' shoulder briefly, and Zephyra's tail brushed his arm. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but Elias recognized it immediately. Trust had begun to grow. Respect, perhaps. And something even more remarkable, connection. That evening, after the storm had passed, the palace staff were still recovering from the chaos. Many whispered about Elias' bravery, but most could not believe what they had seen. He was a janitor. A human. Yet he had done something no trained caretaker, no warrior, no royal advisor had been able to do. Elias returned to the twins' playroom, exhausted but alert. Ignis curled on a high platform, wings folding, while Zephyra played with a glowing orb Elias had fixed earlier. He knelt quietly, watching them, and spoke softly. You see? Together we can do more than you think. I will not hurt you. I am here to help. The twins paused. For a moment, the room was quiet, filled only with soft hums of the palace lights and the twins' breathing. Then Ignis approached slowly, brushing his snout against Elias' shoulder. Zephyra followed, stepping cautiously, then nudging a small glowing orb toward him. Elias smiled, his heart swelling with a quiet pride. This was more than curiosity now. This was connection, understanding, and mutual respect. The twins were no longer completely wild. They had recognized him not as a threat, but as an ally, someone capable of helping them, guiding them, and keeping them safe. He looked around the room at the scattered toys, the repaired platforms, and the glowing crystals. He realized that patience, courage, and care were stronger than fear and force. Every human who had tried to dominate the twins had failed because they used fear and rules. Elias had succeeded because he understood them, because he had empathy, and because he had courage that was quiet, steady, and clever. The Queen, observing from above, finally spoke aloud. Perhaps, humans are not as weak as I believed. Her voice was thoughtful, almost hopeful. Elias had proven something extraordinary. Even the smallest, most ordinary human could make a difference in a world of giants and dragons. That night, as the palace settled into calm, Elias knelt beside the twins, offering small gifts of repaired toys and glowing fruits. Ignis and Zephyra accepted them, sniffing and pawing gently. It was a small victory, but an important one. It was proof that trust could grow, even between creatures thought untamable, and a human. Elias leaned back on his heels and whispered softly, "We are just beginning. There is much more to learn, together." For the first time, the twins allowed themselves to rest near him, wings folding in quiet acceptance. Elias smiled, knowing that the impossible barrier had begun to break, and that no human, no matter how small, was ever truly powerless. The palace was quiet that morning, but the air felt tense. Rumors had spread among the human staff that a rival alien force was moving toward their planet. No one knew exactly when they would arrive, but the Dragon Queen had ordered all humans to prepare defenses. Weapons were polished, drones checked, and energy shields activated. Elias did not work with weapons. He was a janitor. But he had learned something far more important than any sword or laser gun. He understood the twins. And today, that understanding would be tested. The twins were restless. Ignis prowled the high platforms, wings twitching nervously, while Zephyr leapt from one corner to another, making small bursts of fire in frustration. They could sense danger, but they had never faced enemies like this. Fear pulsed through them. Elias approached slowly, hands empty. "It's okay," he said softly. "We can face this together." Ignis growled, flames flickering along his jaw. Zephyr's tail lashed. They were scared, but they listened. Elias had taught them that calm courage mattered more than strength or speed. He knew he had only moments to act before panic took over. The alarms blared suddenly. Outside, alien ships appeared, hovering above the palace. They were sleek and black, with red lights scanning the surface. Energy beams fired at the floating platforms, sending sparks and debris flying. Humans screamed and scrambled to cover. The twins froze, uncertain where to go. Elias acted fast. He grabbed a cleaning drone and a long staff, both tools he usually used for repairs, not battle. "Follow me," he shouted, and he ran toward the twins, weaving through falling debris. Ignis and Zephyr hesitated, but Elias' calm presence gave them courage. They followed, leaping and gliding as he guided them toward safer positions. Elias improvised quickly. He attached small energy projectors to his drones, turning them into makeshift shields. With careful timing, he directed the twins to use their fire strategically. Ignis shot flames toward incoming beams, reflecting them off crystal surfaces. Zephyr flew through the air, nudging debris toward enemy ships to block their vision. Humans watched in disbelief. A janitor was leading dragons in a fight no one thought they could survive. One alien ship broke through the defenses and aimed directly at the palace gates. Elias grabbed a long pole with a glowing tip, using it to redirect a stray energy beam. The twins watched, wide-eyed. Then, instinctively, Ignis used his fire to deflect the energy again, while Zephyr swooped low, using the wind currents to knock the ship off balance. Together, they worked as one team, human and dragons. Elias shouted, guiding them calmly but firmly. "Now! Fire together!" Ignis and Zephyr obeyed, coordinating perfectly with the makeshift drones and the palace shields. The alien ships reeled back, unable to adjust to the strange, clever human tactics. Time seemed to stretch. Sparks flew, platforms swayed dangerously, and energy beams cracked the palace walls. Elias stayed in the center, moving carefully, speaking softly to the twins, keeping them focused. The twins, once wild and untamable, followed his lead without hesitation. After what felt like hours, though it was only minutes, the aliens retreated. The palace was battered, but intact. The twins landed safely beside Elias, breathing heavily but unharmed. For the first time, they looked at him not as someone small, weak, or ordinary, but as a leader. The humans stared in awe. A janitor had coordinated dragons, drones, and defenses to save the palace. They whispered, "Impossible, how did he do that?" The queen herself appeared on the balcony, her scales shimmering in the aftermath light. She studied Elias, eyes wide with respect. No human had ever done anything like this. Not in her kingdom. Not in her lifetime. Elias knelt beside the twins, checking them for scratches and burns. Ignis nudged his hand gently, and Zephyr pressed her head against his shoulder. Elias smiled quietly. "See? We can do more together than you think. You are brave, and so are we." The twins' eyes glimmered with something new, trust, respect, and even admiration. They had followed him through real danger, and they had survived because of his courage, intelligence, and patience. Elias did not boast. He simply looked at them and said, softly, "I will always help you. No matter what comes." That evening, the palace was calm again. The humans worked to repair damage, still whispering about Elias' bravery. The twins were unusually quiet, curling near him in a rare moment of peace. The queen finally spoke aloud. You have proven something remarkable, she said. A human has shown courage and wisdom that even my dragons recognize. Perhaps we have underestimated your kind for too long. Elias felt a warm pride but remained humble. He knew this was only the beginning. The ultimate test had come, and he had passed not with strength, but with courage, cleverness, and trust. He had led the twins through fire and danger, and they had followed him. As night fell, Elias sat between Ignis and Zephyra, repairing a few small broken drones. The twins watched him carefully, occasionally nudging a repaired part or pawing at a glowing tool. The palace was quiet, but Elias knew the real test was over. The twins had accepted him. They had trusted him. And in that moment, Elias understood something important. Humans were not weak. They were clever, brave, and capable of changing the course of even the most dangerous battles. A small janitor could lead dragons, defend a palace, and prove that courage and intelligence mattered more than size or strength. The twins settled beside him, finally calm. Elias whispered softly, "We have done well today. Tomorrow, we will do more. Together." The queen watched in silence, and for the first time, she allowed herself a faint smile. Elias, the human janitor, had shown her children, and her kingdom, that humans could be more than ordinary. The palace was quiet after the storm of battle. Repairs were underway, but the halls still smelled of smoke and burned crystal. Humans moved cautiously, whispering about what had happened. The alien threat was gone, but everyone knew the events of the day had changed everything. Elias stood in the courtyard, watching the twins, Ignis and Zephyra, circle each other playfully. They were alive, unharmed, and strangely calm. No one had ever seen them behave like this. No human had ever earned their trust. And yet, here he was, standing among dragons who had once been untamable. The queen descended from her balcony, her golden eyes fixed on Elias. Her scales glimmered in the afternoon light, reflecting blues and greens like water. She walked slowly, deliberately, as though measuring the man who had changed her children's lives. "You have done what no human, or dragon, could imagine," she said, her voice steady but full of awe. "You faced danger when others fled. You led when others panicked. You earned their trust." Elias bowed slightly, keeping his hands open. He did not need rewards or titles. The queen's words alone carried weight he had never imagined. "I only did what I thought was right," he said simply. "I wanted them safe. That is all." The twins stopped their play and approached him. Ignis lowered his head to Elias' shoulder, and Zephyra pressed close, brushing her wings lightly against him. Elias smiled, kneeling to meet them at eye level. For the first time, the bond felt complete. The dragons trusted him, not because he was strong, or brave in the usual sense, but because he understood them, cared for them, and never feared them. Other humans watched in silence, mouths open, hearts pounding. They had seen battles, storms, and chaos, but nothing like this. A janitor, an ordinary human, had stood at the center of all of it and emerged not just alive, but victorious. He had proven that courage and cleverness could change the impossible into reality. The queen gestured toward the courtyard. "Elias, you shall remain in my service, not as a janitor, but as my children's guardian and advisor. You have shown wisdom beyond your years and bravery beyond your stature. You have earned a place here." Elias shook his head gently. "I do not need titles. I only want to help them grow safely." The queen smiled faintly. "Then you shall have my trust and my gratitude. That is more than enough." The twins nudged him, playful and calm. Elias ran his hand over Ignis' head and scratched Zephyr behind her ears. He realized that the bond they shared was stronger than fear, stronger than fire, stronger than any weapon. Trust had turned into loyalty, and loyalty had become friendship. That evening, the palace gathered in the main hall. Humans, dragons, and even the queen's advisors looked on as Elias quietly repaired a few broken drones in the corner. The twins stood beside him, tails brushing his legs, heads lifted proudly. The queen spoke again. "Let this be remembered," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. Humans are not weak. They are capable of great courage, cleverness, and loyalty. Elias has shown us that even the smallest and most ordinary among us can achieve the extraordinary. Elias felt a quiet warmth in his chest. He did not seek praise, but hearing it from the Queen gave him hope. Humans had always been underestimated here. He had proven that size, strength, and status were not the measure of true power. Courage, intelligence, and understanding were. The twins chirped and nudged him toward a glowing platform. Elias climbed carefully, holding out his hands. Ignis and Zephyra jumped onto the platform beside him, their wings folding neatly. Together, they looked over the palace courtyard, the city beyond, and the horizon where the alien threat had vanished. Elias breathed in the fresh evening air. For the first time, he felt truly at peace. He had tamed the untamable, not by force, not by threats, but by patience, courage, and care. The twins, once feared by all, now followed his guidance, trusting him completely. The Queen's voice came softly behind him. "You have changed everything," she said. "Not just for my children, but for all who believed humans were powerless. You have proven that even the smallest human can shape destiny." Elias smiled quietly. "It was not just me. It was all of us. Dragons, humans, together, we can face anything." The twins nudged him playfully, and Elias laughed softly. He realized that true heroism was not about glory or titles. It was about courage when no one else would act, cleverness when no solution seemed possible, and care for those who could not protect themselves. As night fell, the palace glowed softly under the moonlight. The twins curled beside Elias, and for the first time, the palace felt like a home, not a place of fear or chaos, but a place where trust, courage, and friendship could thrive. Elias whispered softly, "We are stronger than anyone thinks. And together, we can face anything." The Queen watched in silence from above, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. Elias, the human janitor, had transformed from an unnoticed servant into a hero who had earned the respect of dragons, humans, and a queen. He had done the impossible. He had tamed the untamable. And in that moment, Elias understood something profound: being human was never about weakness. Being human was about courage, cleverness, and heart. The palace was quiet, the twins rested, and Elias knew one thing for certain: humans could achieve greatness beyond imagination. And he, the janitor, had proven it.